Hi, welcome to this episode of Prophecy for the Last Hour. My name is Liz McGee, and I am going to do a teaching today. And my new tagline, I have to change it because I don't always use the dinner hour. It's just to say that I have meat prepared for the elect. So today, I want to talk about something. Actually, I want to come down on the side of something, so to speak. I want to make a judgment call on my part. So you don't have to agree with me, but this is where the data has taken me to this point. You know, I always say that I believe we are really in a propaganda war. We are in a war of two seed lines. We are in a highly charged war against principalities and powers, spiritual wickedness between the prince of the air. And a lot of times this propaganda war is it's in the mind, it's in information, it's in knowledge, it's in the dissemination and the transmission of our truths, of what is true. So anyways, this is really heating up in terms of the unpacking today that's going on with the divine feminine. Right now, I've done some teaching on this, and I have come down and said, in my opinion, the exoteric text called the Bible that we use today is unanimously in the Hebrew and can be shown to be translated over into the Greek. It's talking about Hokmah, Bina, the feminine aspect of Yahweh, wisdom is feminine. Now, I want to touch on that and go into that at the end. But before I get there, I want to kind of talk about two knowledge streams that tremendously affect the understanding of this whole principle or construct, the divine feminine. And it relates to the Godhead. The first thing is Gnosticism versus Kabbalah. Both of these knowledge streams, by their definition and their whole nature, they deal with the esoteric. I have many teachings on this. This is sort of what I'm all about, trying to figure out what is the difference and what what is in the esoteric knowledge that is our inheritance that we can know. And so a lot of it has come down in the early church and historically through what's known as a mystery school, quote unquote, and through authentic Jewish mysticism, which has been a lot of times couched in what is known as the oral Torah, which comes to us through, I believe it started with Adam, Abraham, Moshe, the 70 elders that were assigned with Moshe to know this knowledge and to disseminate it. And it's known as the keys to the kingdom. Yeshua talked about it. The keys have been lost and found. We are in a generation, a time where they are totally being restored again. So this is sort of what I'm about. But let me just start with Gnosticism, because like I said, gnosis, the word that has morphed, is a Greek word that means esoteric knowledge, okay? On the Hebrew side, the flip side is you would use a word in the Hebrew. It is called Sod, S-O-D. It is the mystery level. It is where things are couched, where you need a lot of deep Torah knowledge and wisdom and understanding. They're not known at the surface level. In other words, these are not things you teach your kindergartners, all right? This is more meaty information that is to go to the wise among the people. I had teachings on this, how Second Ezra really lays this out. It is through the scriptures. Daniel talks about it, sealed knowledge and information. So I don't want to get too much backed up. But let's compare these two root systems, because when you have a stream of knowledge, you have to get back to the root. You have to try to actually determine what its root source is. So Gnosticism, let's start there, is, if people don't know, now when we talk about Gnosticism, what people are mostly referring to, in large part, well, there's always been a stream of esoteric knowledge in the mystery schools in pagan cultures, okay? But in 1948, I believe it was, let's just check mine, 1945, okay, you had two amazing things happen, I think 45 and then 46. The Dead Sea Scrolls came on the scene, okay, which, let me just say this again, teaching, we came into a full knowledge, we are coming into again a full knowledge of who the Essenes, the Nazarenes, the Ebionites, early groups that were at the time of Yeshua, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and now we have the Essenes, the Nazarenes, these sects that were known basically as the keepers of the secrets. This is their body of knowledge, their body of literature that they kept, were keeping the deep esoteric writings and understanding. You could say the keys to the kingdom from Moshe on down. Now, that's my opinion. A lot of people, it's a fascinating study, but it is pretty evident from their writings. They were way deep into deep understandings and wisdom. Their main, okay, well, don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay, so you have the Dead Sea Scrolls, but then you have these Nag Hammadi codices. There was a group of books found in Egypt. So the Nag Hammadi codices, or what they're called today, or the Gnostic Gospels. There's a collection of early Christian and Gnostic texts. They were discovered near Upper Egypt in the town of Nag Hammadi in 1945. Now, the contents were written in what is known as Coptic. They were Coptic language, which is a form of Egyptian that began, kind of in the was popular first to the 13th centuries about. But it was an adaptation of the Greek alphabet. It had the addition of 6 or 7 signs from Demotic to represent Egyptian sounds, that the Greek language. Now, this is important to understand because from a Jewish point of view, or Hebraic point of view, no text can be considered authoritative. This is why the Dead Sea Scrolls, like there were certain books the Essenes, to our knowledge, did not have in their library. One of the things, it has to be a text that is found in Hebrew and Aramaic. Those are the primary languages. This is what we're understanding, that Hebrew is the language of Yahweh. This is and it's such a, and I can't even get into it. It's different from other languages. It's a polysemous glyph language that contains incredible amounts of information in the way that you can arrange it and code it and do different things to it. All right. But Greek is not considered, like Greek primacy is not considered making a text authoritative. So I would say that probably the New Testaments were written in Hebrew because they're circulating among Essenes and Jews who are still speaking, especially in the priestly class, especially in the people who are making it their lifestyle to study these things. As a lot of people today who are going back and unpacking this, are starting to study Hebrew because you just got to get it. It would be the same then. To understand, number one, so Gnosticism, in my opinion, would be a lesser transmission because it's in Coptic. All right, so we don't know if it ever was. We never found an original Hebraic translation. The other point being, in terms of comparing, because there's people even on YouTube who want to say that the Gnostic texts and the Dead Sea Scrolls are one and the same, and no, they're not. They are geographically in different parts of the planet. This Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt is like almost 600 miles separated from Qumran. All right, so you have a huge geography. You have different streams. There is no literature to, and neither one of each other's texts were found in each other's collections. I think there's one exception, and I have to check if it's the Gospel of Thomas, but there is no large shared library, at all, period. Now, the thing is, so this is Gnosticism, and I'm coming to, when I first was studying this, and this is my little anecdote, I started to read both, because they're both dealing with esoteric knowledge, and I started reading about the Essenes and some of the texts, and I'm like, and I would read some of the Gnostic stuff, but it hit me one day totally out of the blue, very strongly, an impression which I feel, from the Ruach, that this is totally the way Lucifer works. He always says he will always shadow immediately what Yahweh is doing. We're in a battle. So Yahweh makes a move, Lucifer makes a move. But the Nag Hammadi codices coming out at the exact same time, basically, was nothing more than just, this was again Hasatan throwing out his darts, his knowledge stream out there to muddy the waters of what was coming forward with the Dead Sea Scrolls. So I consider them to be less authoritative, less reliable, and coming from a knowledge stream that you cannot document is from the scribal house of Judah. It absolutely cannot be done. They are later, most people say they started in written down or redacted or whatever, 100, 300, by 300 and 400, there's a lot of scurry. There's a lot of talk about these Gnostic texts, okay? But so they are not considered to be, in my opinion, authoritative on the same level as works that you would find that are totally in Hebrew from the scribal house of Judah. Now, on the flip side, because we're in a propaganda war, so it's very important who you source. Now, the flip side, Kabbalah, which is now I'm talking about Jewish Kabbalah, the writings that have been redacted from a stream of oral tradition or oral Torah, which I have a lot of talks on this. This is my opinion, the way that can absolutely be documented to have originated and to have stayed within the scribal house of Judah. Now, the reason I say this is important is because it is, in my opinion, that when the birthright blessings were split, you understand the two houses between the house of Judah and the house of Ephraim, house of Israel, they each got a portion of the birthright blessing, kind of, Ephraim got the blessing, Judah got the birthright. Within the birthright, they had to keep, they were entrusted with the oracle. Actually, let me go here to explain my point. Because you understand, I'm making a complete case that Kabbalah is authentic and authoritative. The Nag Hammadi codices, Gnosticism, as it came into the early church, is, if you want to use the word, is a completely spurious, and I will agree with that, set of writings. Now, Paul states in Romans 9:4, he makes this case, and he just try to listen to all these things that he is saying, because he is a Hebrew of the Hebrews, and he says Judah, Romans 9:4, Judah is number one. He lists these 7 things. Judah is the people of Israel. Now, Judah is all that's left in the nation. You understand the two houses, the tribe of Judah, some Benjamites, whoever else was loyal to that house, other Ephraimite tribes. They were kind of lodged in as a nation, greatly under pressure and siege with the Romans. But they were what was left of the people of Israel as a visible nation in the world, and that was stating that Yahweh Elohim was their high God. All right, so they are the people of Israel that's all left. The rest of the tribes, you understand, are scattered. They're gone. They're Gentiles now. There are pockets of them, but they are by and large not part of the house of Judah. Now, there's the adoption as sons. This is the whole point with the covenant at Sinai, where he adopted them. They made a covenant. He was going to be their father Yahweh, their Abba God, and the Israelites were going to be his children. There was an adoption as sons that went on. Theirs is the divine glory. And I'm reading all out of 9:4. This is important because this relates to the divine feminine. And what Paul is saying, because he understands, the divine glory refers to the Shekinah, which is a Hebraic word which can be used to talk about the divine feminine. And it has always been referred to in the Old Testament as the glory cloud. All right? The divine glory, the Shekinah, the female ruach of Elohim, which is in their literature, which is why you have this feminine that resided with them. This is the point in the temple. In the Holy of Holies, when they would go in, the Shekinah would come down, the glory cloud would come down, and they would commune with the glory cloud. And then there's a story where the glory cloud left. Remember, with just before the final going into Babylon. I mean, that was the whole story. They saw, the sages saw the glory just up and leave and depart from Israel. Okay, but it was theirs, and when you understand too the Shekinah, the masculine feminine aspect. The pillar of fire is the masculine aspect. The glory cloud is the feminine. All right, so and that's what delivered them. Right, the angel of the Lord. See, it's a really okay. The covenants. There's another thing Paul talks about. The covenants are in Israel. He made a covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. The covenants are in Israel, in Judah. The receiving of the law. This is the point. They were keeping the law, and in a ceremonial sense, the best they could. We know the whole story. They were Hellenized. They were usurped the priesthood. I mean, there were tons and tons of issues, but by and large, the house of Judah was keeping the Torah within their house, so to speak. The temple worship. Theirs was the temple worship. They were the ones that had the temple in Jerusalem, and they were, even though it was Herod's temple, whatever, the first temple, the second temple, theirs is the witness to the world of the temple worship. Okay, theirs are the promises. This is the whole point too. This is the promise to the house, at this point, to the house of Judah, that if you will be the scribal house, if you will keep my covenants and my Torah, and if you will, keep the bloodline for the Messiah to come, the promises that were given to Judah, and they did that, came down to the wire, very close down to the wire. Theirs is the patriarchs. Again, because of the writing, because of the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the story of and it really includes Enoch and Adam, Shem. These are the patriarchs. These are the high priests of every generation. Well, before, we went to the whole Mosaic thing, but beforehand, you can make the case, in my opinion, patriarchs, Adam, Enoch, Shem, these were the high priests. These were the people who were given the birthright blessings in every generation. And also the genealogy of Yeshua. This is why they kept a pure bloodline, that the Messiah, the seed of Messiah was able to come through basically a pure bloodline, which now we understand was non-genetically altered, not part of the mixed multitude of the nations of the Gentiles. This is very important to understand, because Kabbalah comes out of this stream. It is absolutely authentic writings from the house of Judah. It is the meat of the word. It is the sud level. It's sewed. I have to always think about that, because I'm supposed to think sewed, like I'm sewing sometimes with the pronunciations. I talk so fast, I don't have time to really make sure I'm getting it right in my mind. But anyways, these are the things that, now, none of these things can be described to the Gnostic text. When you read the Gnostic text, first of all, they have a very similar, if you're familiar with esoteric knowledge, they have a very similar storyline. There are definitely some truths in here, but there are so many errors and falsehoods, and I'm going to get into why this is. But the point is, they don't scripture and verse things. You read the Zohar, people, which is the redacted body of knowledge that we have left, basically, of the esoteric understanding that will explain to us the holy mysteries of Yahweh. We have a very mysterious, he doesn't, and you have to be kind of sometimes adult to get some of this intense information that we have. But the Gnostic texts do not, give you chapter and verse. They don't reference, they're not written from a Hebraic point of view, where their whole emphasis is to give you scriptural proofs and seals of what they're saying. Whereas in the Kabbalah, you will understand, and especially in the written Zohar, and I always recommend the edition that's out by Daniel Mann, the footnote, you will understand that this is completely scripturally based. So all that being said, to me, there's no equal footing, all right? So when you go into the Divine Feminine, to use the Gnostic text as a kind of basis for using it as a proof text for the Divine Feminine, that's really not necessary, and that gets into shaky ground because it leads into errors. Whereas if we just stuck, because I had a discussion, one of my best people I respect the most on YouTube is telling me that, doesn't want to be affiliated with me per se in this discussion, because I'm getting my information or basing a lot of my scriptural proofs from the Kabbalah and from the Talmud. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we are so mixed up today. Ephraimite, this is what I wanted to say. If you're an Ephraimite researcher coming back and trying to understand the writing of the House of Judah, first of all, you are at a serious disadvantage. They are light years ahead of us. So let's just be a little bit humble there. But Paul makes the admonition in the same chapter 9 that the root, that we are grafted into that root. We're grafted into the scribal house of Judah, not the other way around. And that root bears us. Any knowledge stream we have should be coming from them. And trying to understand it as a Gentile. This is our problem. It's always been our problem. You just can't do it, all right? But he says not to become arrogant. This is what I see so much today, an arrogancy against the Talmud, against the Mishnah, against the writings of the sages, and against the deep esoteric understandings in the Kabbalah. And it's just complete arrogancy. Like, you know how to make that judgment call. And that the root supports us, okay? So this is something that is really important in my opinion. There is no reason, if you want to do proof text on this, I can proof text all day long from the Hebraic scriptures on the Divine Feminine. So that all being said, I want to get into a little bit now more deeper about what who originated, in my opinion, these Gnostic texts and what is going on, because there is a huge propaganda war. And this is, and most people, this is my people destroyed for lack of knowledge. Most people do not do their due diligence. They do not do their homework. And I will say that for as many Jews as Christians, most Jews do not even understand their own writing, do not spend the time reading their own writing, let alone the Christians. That's why Kabbalah, there's so much bad. It's a fight to get the correct Hebraic biblical understanding of what it is, because I'm never talking about the syncretic, occultic, Luciferian Kabbalah with a Q that's out there, that Aleister Crowley was all over, this kind of thing. People need to understand. One is an apple, one is an orange, and they don't have the same root systems, bottom line. Okay, so let me go into some things about, okay, because this all touches on a lot of different things, but when you get into the divine feminine and into Kabbalah versus Gnosticism, let me make a couple of points here. All right. So there was this guy called Simon Magus. We get in Acts 28, 8:21, this guy comes on the scene, and he is a chief magician, okay? He is a sorcerer. He is a Luciferian wizard, okay? He is a Magus, okay? These are all words to talk about on this. This is someone who has deep knowledge of quote-unquote occult knowledge. All right. Now, how did he get this? How did these people get this? Because the flip side is, when people understand and have to understand, we have to grow up and understand. When you leave the world of materiality and you are dealing with anything metaphysical, you are into realms that exist, that are powerful, that have authority, will, and volition, and you just don't go out there. This is the point. This is a real world, okay? And it's operating as much today as it was then. And this is what we're battling in principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness and in knowledge and the dissemination of knowledge. Because on one side, you have Luciferian things that is the father of all lies, that just wants to lie and spin and divert things away from the truth, which is, in my opinion, where the Gnostic texts are highly unreliable. They definitely have truth in them, but they are full of errors and wrong conclusions spinning away. But the reason, all right, we're going to get back to this guy Simon Magus. It's, in my opinion, now I have to say this again, there's a lot, and this to me, okay, this is how Lucifer, in my opinion, works. So I've been in this game a little while, this knowledge, and I'm beginning to see this. He can't do anything against the truth. All he can do is muddy it, skewer it, spin it, distort it, all these negative things about it. So it's not pure, it's not peaceable, it's not easy to just be received. You got all these, okay. There's a lot of people who want to equate now Paul, the Apostle Paul, believe it or not, as Simon Magus. And it's such a subtle mind game thing, because if you don't understand Luciferian infiltration, truly in its spiritual, and how they just, this phrase, if you say something often enough, if you say a lie often enough, people will be, they're getting so much traction. See, they implant scholars, they implant or infiltrate, but implant people that will introduce spurious concepts. What's the word? Heresies. But they, somebody get into a heresy, but there's a biblical word, I can't think of it. There's no actual smoking gun or context you can do to equate Paul with Simon Magus. You can make inferences, you can spin things, so you can put it in a certain, and I've seen this out of context kind of bubble, okay? But let's just stick with this guy who the early church fathers will fully admit he was a real guy. He really did exist, and he was a Samaritan, and he came from an area, they call him Simon the Magician. He came from whose base of operations was at Gittha, a city in Samaria. All right. Now, I'm just not going to do this whole thing with Paul, because, first of all, Paul is from, as far as they say, he's a Greek, from a Greek city. all of them really break down. But where they really break down is in the fruit and in the dissemination, the final end result. All right, let me put this. What I'm trying to say is I consider it to be a deflection. Satan is always trying to get the heat off of him, and that we can't really see him clearly in his dealings. Remember, he's a master of disguise, and put it on someone else. So today the heat is going over on Paul, and to make him look and to cloud the issue when we are really getting close and we are really getting close to exposing these Luciferians, how they work and operate. All right. So Irenaeus, there came a period of time, 150 to about 300 or 400 of these apologetics, of these refuting heresies, of these works, this Gnostic work was coming into the church. Now, in my opinion, what is going on here is you do have fully initiated Kabbalists. You have, and I use these words, fully initiated, people who are mature at handling the meat of the word of Yahweh. Yeshua calls John the Baptist one of the most greatest prophets ever lived. You don't get to be a prophet of this magnitude unless you have a full handle on all of the word of Yahweh in all its different, from soup to nuts, okay, from the most elementary principles to a full mature understanding of what you're dealing with in the spiritual realm. And you have power. You manifest power, a demonstration of the Spirit's power. Yeshua did that. John the Baptist did that. These people were doing this. So the Essenes have a record of demonstrations of the Spirit's power. So the story, what's more accurately defined in the scriptures, in my opinion, or in the writings of the church history, is and this is what I'll say, he was an Essene in the sense, there were lots of sects of Essene. He was a disciple of John the Baptist. When John the Baptist was beheaded, there was a power vacuum, obviously, and the way that they are set up, that there was someone else, and I think his name was Dionysius, was slated to take over the head of the sect, the group, but Simon Magus thought it should have gone to him, and then through subterfuge, through a power play, through a spiritual encounter of demonstration of power. See, because they know how to demonstrate and use the spiritual forces used to demonstrate power. This is called lying signs and wonders, and usurp that position. But what he ultimately did do is he took his knowledge in his understanding. He went to the dark side. See, people think, I was thinking of the dark side. We think these things are all fantasy. We think all these stories that everybody's trying to tell us. And I think mythology is so much more true, more fact than fiction. Defecting to the dark side. Absolutely. Does it happen? Absolutely. So we just have to grow up into these things. He became a spawn or a tool of Hasatan in the generation of Yeshua to raise up a whole systematic theology of esoteric understanding that would spin, first of all, would entice and bring into it those who were called, or possibly who were drawn to understanding the holy mysteries. So he was trying to thwart that, because Yeshua came and restored the keys to the kingdom, the understanding, and he was trying to stop the knowledge stream of the true understanding really moving forward into the Gentiles, because there was such a flash of power that went off with the apostles and with those under Yeshua and with the first wave of the gospel going out. But within 100 years, it was pretty much shut down. Well, it was shut down for very obvious reasons, in my opinion. I don't want to get too deep into all this. I just want to make a case that Simon Magus is a historical figure that can be documented, who was a major Luciferian practitioner of witchcraft. Now let me say this. In Acts 8:21, it said, Peter said unto him, thy silver perish with thee. This is the story we get. And that thou didst think that the gift of Yahweh is possessed with money. There is not for thee part or lot in this word, for thy heart is not right before Elohim. Therefore turn from this evil of thine and pray to the Lord, if by chance the thought of thy heart shall be forgiven. For I see that thou art in the gall of bitterness and the bond of iniquity. Now, I want to make a point about wisdom. And this is what is really all we said. This is sort of a summation. This is from the wisdom of Solomon. But it says in chapter 1 and verse 4, it says, for into a malicious soul wisdom shall not enter, nor dwell in the body that is subject unto sin. This is a very important principle to understand. and I want to put this out there. If you are living in sin, this is why it says, and there's a verse in the Testament that says that many will call on me in that day and say, Lord, Lord, didn't we do great miracles? And didn't we do demonstrations of power in your name? And he will say, away from me, I never knew you. There is an absolute law binding Torah lifestyle, holiness, and the dissemination of wisdom from the Ruach. If you're not living a Torah-based lifestyle, free from all besetting sins or willful sins, then you have to be suspect of the stream of wisdom or knowledge or just spiritual discernment you're getting. Because it's very clear in Scripture, wisdom will not, or Heavenly Mother will not. I mean, it's like you're not going to, elevate or honor a kid that will not follow your rules, okay? We have to live a Torah lifestyle. And I don't believe Paul ever preached against that. I think that this is something that was established and understood by the early church, by the Gentiles coming in, by everybody. But whatever, that's for another day. So this is an important principle, all right? Now, there's another part in here in the Wisdom of Solomon. I want to bring this home a little bit because, see, we have to understand who we're dealing with. Now, so you know the backdrop of the story with Simon Magus. Now, the point is, so what I'm saying is you have to live the life, you have to walk the walk, talk the talk. What was going on in these Gnostic camps, so to speak? And this is what's happening today, is Gnosticism, this whole thing, this thirst for, esoteric knowledge is being filled in a lot of people's by bringing in a lot of these spurious heresies again. A rose is still a rose, no matter what you call it. In Irenaeus, who contra heresies, he wrote against a lot of these, Gnostic heresies and other heresies. But let me see, where should I go first here? Let me just kind of organize these thoughts here. So I want to make this point. Therefore, they're initiated priests. This is from Irenaeus, contra heresies. This is some points he made of 23, 123, 1 through 4. In the 4th verse, he says, wherefore, their initiated priests, meaning Gnostics, live immorally, and every one of them practices magic arts to the best of his ability. They use exorcisms, incantations, love phylacteries, and spells, and what are called familiars, and dream senders, and the rest of the curious arts are assiduously cultivated by them. Dark arts, whatever you want to call it, witchcraft, whatever. They have also an image of Simon made in the likeness of Jupiter, and Helen in that of Mavera, and they worship the statues and have a designation from their most impiously minded founder, being called Simon Magus, from whom the gnosis, or the falsely so-called esoteric understanding, derives its origin, as one can learn from their own assertions. Now, this pairing up of the doctrine with the lifestyle should clue anybody in that this is Luciferian, because this is what we're seeing today, is we're seeing the lifestyles of these people come out. They're pedophiles. They do the same, they will not repent of their witchcrafts, their fornications, and their lying. Okay, just as it says in Revelation. Now, Epiphanius, another one, and goes on to say, he makes this point, from the time of Christ, Yeshua, to our day, the first heresy was that of Simon the magician, and through it was not correctly and distinctly one of the Christian names. In other words, these people were not, they were, the word Christian is a later, these are, I don't even get into this, the sects of the Nazarenes and the Essenes, people who were coming into this. Yet it worked great havoc by its corruption, and it produced great corruption among the early saints. And I'm kind of had to paraphrase that a little bit. This Simon was a sorcerer, and the base of his operations was at Githa, a city in Samaria, which still exists as a village. And he deluded the Samaritan people with magical phenomena, deluding and enticing them with a bait by saying he was the great power of Yah that had come down from above. He told the Samaritans, see, this is the point. That gets into a lot of the difference between Samaria, which had a very mixed religion, and Judah in the south, which had at least comparatively a much cleaner, purer stream going on there. And he told the Samaritans that he was the Father, and that the Jews, and to the Jews that he was the Son. So this was a complete power play. And this is why in the Clementine homilies, the whole thing is a drama in a lot of ways. It is a juxtaposition of a power play between Kefa, who is the most initiator or the most, disciple of Yeshua, and this Simon Magus, who is a Luciferian esoteric, occultist. All right. So again, and they were both named Simon, and they both are giving demonstrations of the Spirit's power. And they're both, so right away out of the get-go, you have a power play going on. This is what, Hasatan always does. Because people, aren't necessarily going to do due diligence and do that. And because people are drawn away of their own hearts and their own lusts. I mean, a lot of people don't want to live righteously. Well, I'm not going to preach on all this stuff. But what it says is that by bestowing the Spirit, he could amass large sums of money and make a profit. Again, here we have, the whole problem was it's Lutheran, what is the root motivation? And it says in the Didache, which is a highly seen, and I believe the most early church document that tells the lifestyle, that people who look at people, prophets, teachers, apostles, whatever, what their attitude towards money is. Okay, that's a real giveaway, a real clue of their spiritual source. Okay. So this group, both the homilies and the recognitions connect Simon with the rise of the Gnostics, Dositheus and Simon Magus, as well as being connected to the Jewish sects that opposed the Apostolic Church, Sadducees, Samaritans, scribes, Pharisees, and the Baptists, which is now at this point after the death of John the Baptist, and we have this today. The sect became a polluted sect, which is really in the records. The Baptists, the last of which would morph into other cults like Simonians, Dositheans, and Mandarins. So if you study deeply these Gnostic texts have a root system, and it does go back to Simon the sorcerer. All right. Now, all that being said, this one thing I want to point out here is this is another trail that I'm on that it's so interesting. I've done some teachings on Enoch, deciphering the 70 shepherds over the 70 nations, over the 70 judges, the 70 shepherds that are over the Gentile nations. And what I'm totally understanding now is, okay, and this is where Hasatan has so watered down the translations and has so taken away our sharp vision of understanding what we're dealing with. Because Yeshua, we are dealing with principalities and powers. We're dealing with spiritual wickedness in high places. That's not like meaning they live in a tall skyscraper in New York City. That means they're connected to high heavenly dimensions. They get power, authority. Remember, Hasatan. Oh, I know I have to do this one thing. I'm going to screen share something quick to find in my quote. But Hasatan took Yeshua to the top of a mountain, so to speak, showed him all the kingdoms of the world, and said, I will give these to you. I said, Hasatan, the person gets to a certain level, they get their authority from a high place. Hasatan, okay? Let me just screen share this last quote. Okay. This is from the recognitions, but I want you to listen to this wording and listen to your Bible stories. Try to filter this quickly through your mind. But this is what the record, Simon says, that Simon Magus was able to do. This is the level of Luciferian magic that we're dealing with today. They were dealing with it, that has never gone away. All right. In different societies, it's been more out, or more hidden, depending on where that culture stands in righteousness. We used to stand in great righteousness against all this. Now we are getting so compromised. It is so in our face. Anyways, Recognitions 2:9. It says he can make himself visible, this is talking about Simon Magus. He can make himself visible or invisible at will. He can pass through rocks as if they were clay. He can throw himself down from a mountain unhurt. And that one of the temptations that Hasatan tried to throw on Yeshua? He can animate statues. Let me read all this and then I'll go back to some of it. He can animate statues, make trees spring up. He can throw himself into the fire without harm. He can appear with two faces. He says, I can change myself into a sheep or a goat. I shall make a beard to grow upon little boys. I shall ascend by flight into the air. I shall exhibit abundance of gold. I shall make and unmake kings. I shall be worshipped as Yahweh, as Elohim. I shall have divine honors publicly assigned to me, so that an image of me shall be set up, and I shall be adored as God. Now, come on. Is that not Satan speaking through this fully given over Magus to him? I just want to say Magus, but anyways. Okay. And this is what we have. We have even times where these things have happened in Scripture. There is, remember the little boy who was throwing himself into the fire. These are, I don't think we understand the knowledge stream that is in these. And this is why the power of our prayer as an elect of Yahweh to use the name of Yahweh and the blood of Yeshua to shut this stuff down. These lying signs and wonders that are going to come back, and they are here now, and they're going to come back so manifestly in our face and deceive even the elect, if such a thing were so, with the lying signs and wonders. But we need to understand what we're dealing with, Luciferian magic, which is nothing we have the authority to throw, to break. All right? But visible, invisible, he can pass through rocks, he can throw. The story is that Simon Magus, there was a big confrontation in Rome, and this is in the literature. You can read this in the Recognitions. I believe you can also read this in the Apocrypha of Peter. But there was a huge power demonstration, and Simon Magus was able to make himself fly through the air, and showing he's the great one. I mean, see, a lot of it is, it's about, Yeshua, he was just humble. He had power and authority, and he would heal people, but he very quiet, very meek. It wasn't a show about him. It was all directed to the Father. There's so many ways in which you can show the fruit, compare the fruit of these things. And he would tell people, don't, just go and repent of your sins and sin no more. But I want to say that he can animate statues and fly through the air. This is one of the things that was in the Zohar, and I had this quote. I've read it in another ones, but basically, this was the golden calves. We think they're just making a statue again, an inanimate statue you just put up on a shelf, or something people worship it. No, they had these Luciferian infiltrators were able to deceive the people because, see, they had made an image, they had animated it. It said that these golden calves were able to fly through the air. In other words, they demonstrated a spiritual power that seemed to be like, because you understand, my opinion is that magic is really just technology used in unbelievable ways that it makes it look like, oh my gosh, these people are gods, whatever. How do they get to do this kind of stuff? Okay, this is the ruse. This is the deception. And he used magnetism. It said it right there in this quote that they were using. See, they understand how to harness. And I don't want to get into all this stuff, but this is what it's all about: learning how to harness these forces out there, magnetism, and make it do like all these lying signs and wonders, bells and whistles, to get people to be wowed and follow you. All right, it's all a ruse. But the point is that in the literature, it will say this a lot, that both Paul and Peter were present at this power encounter. It was really a showdown between Kepha and Simon. And as he's flying through the air, they prayed and they broke his power. He fell to the ground. He broke his legs, and he kind of went off ignobly, and that was kind of the end of his career in their face, so to speak. So these are things, this can all be, you can flush this out, but this is my point. You have to look at the fruit. There's no difference between these Luciferians then and now, and they are always trying to beguile us and to get us off track. But we have to get back to our root systems. We have to stay, as I say, in the house. This Gnosticism really does have, in my opinion, has a root system. You can bring it back to this character to a large extent in the New Testament, and we need to be, wise as serpent and harmless as a dove. Here, let's stop our screen share. Okay, now let me move on to another point. This these principalities and powers, this was something that was known. You know, this is new information, all this new unpacking, but in so much of the literature, this is what is known. These 70 shepherds, these who is just like, I put the top generals, there's all these minions of Hasatan, he's the God of this world. The Father gave the Gentile nations over to these quote unquote watcher angels who were under his authority and were to be his, so to speak, policemen over these groups, because they did not want to obey him in any kind of holiness or covenant. So, but what happened was, and let me read you some of the quotes, how this thing morphed forward. Because in Irenaeus, what I was quoting before about Simon Magus, in 28:3, he says, wherefore also he himself had come to take away for the first time and free her from bonds. All right, let me just start up in here. It says, for as the angels were mismanaging the world, since each of them desired the sovereignty, he had come to set matters right. Yeshua, and that he had descended, transforming him. Oh, no. Let me get the context right now that I've read this one. Okay, this is what Simon Magus was telling the people, that he had come. All right, let's start over. Because there's 2 points in here. For as the angels were mismanaging the world, since each of them desired the sovereignty, he had come to set matters right, and that he had descended, transforming himself and being made like to the powers and principalities of angels. Okay, that is Simon Magus, is he saying that he is the power. He was the image of the Father in that generation. He was, so to speak, the promise. He's just coming up with this whole false narrative. But he was transforming himself into a principality party, that his power he was identifying was coming from these entities. All right. But the point is that the angels were mismanaging. This is Irenaeus's understanding. This is the whole point. This is why we're going to judge angels at the end of the age, because they are mismanaging. They are going beyond what their stated authority was. They are the problem entities, people, men on the earth today. All right. And they are the first ones that are going down when this age wraps up. So the point is, we do have to understand that this is the true historic biblical understanding. This is where, when Daniel's talking about the prince, his prayer was hindered because, there was a battle going on between the prince of Persia and then the prince of Greece was going to come. We do really battle against these astral entities, all right? But praise God, Yeshua did make a show. See, Yeshua did descend. This is the point. He was the one who descended, who made a show openly and defeated openly those Gentile, those astral angels over the Gentile nations, to free them so that he could go in. That's who he bound. This is what it's all talking about in the imagery and the language. He bound them. He dismantled them. He took their authority away, and he went in and he got his people out. And that's what's been going on for 2,000 years. Anybody who wants to get out from under that kingdom, that authority, you can't. You transfer kingdoms, you come into the kingdom of light, and this is the story we're in. But now we're at a paradigm shift. We're coming to the end of the age. There's going to be a total showdown. I'm picking my side, whatever, and I'm expecting to be mighty and do exploits. So anyways, let me give you a couple of other places where this is confirmed. This is in the Wisdom of Solomon. Now, just say the Wisdom of Solomon is a Greek work from the 1st century, from Alexandria. It's a pseudegraphia. Now, Alexandria was known as had a strong, very strong and thriving Jewish presence. Philo of Alexandria, who was one of the 1st century witnesses to everything that went on with Yeshua and with the whole history, especially with the demise of the temple and the demise of, like with Josephus. So he was an Alexandrian. The point is, but it's called a pseudegraph. There's 2 words I want to say. That a lot of times when you start studying the other scriptures or the non-biblical text, they'll use words like it's pseudegraphy in a very negative way, or they'll use words like it's a spurious document. And those to me are they're kind of deliberately nuanced bad words to use because they throw you off. Writing in a pseudegraphy was a very accepted way of writing. You would take on the name of a patriarch or a sage, and you would write in their similar style. You know, they had a body of understanding, and you would carry it forward for your generation, you would decipher it for your generation, you would put it forth again for your generation, and you would identify the patriarch you were coming from, you know, as kind of saying, okay, now I'm writing kind of as an Enochian, you know, or I'm kind of writing in Abrahamics, you know, I'm carrying forward the story of Abrahamic story and understanding. Some of these you have to understand, yeah, some of these that come out today are forgeries, but some of them are actually authentic writings from people who were doing this, sages. Some we know who wrote it, but many you don't. You didn't do it this way. But you have to look, in my view, when these texts, they're genuine qualities. First of all, if you can find it in Hebrew, that's an indicator. And if you can find it in, if it's, and this is why I read for content. All right, I try to follow and find the truth in the narrative. Spurious is also a bad word because spurious kind of implies negativity. Spurious, whether, I guess what the scholars are trying to say is it's sort of in a gray zone. But much, this is the point of research, much gray zones have been put in the black zones or in the right zone today. Unpacking Enoch, unpacking a lot of these texts today, we're beginning to understand this is definitely literature that was accepted and read in the 1st century and before. These are Hebraic, these are writings from the scribal house of Judah. Anyways, all that being said, Wisdom of Solomon starts out in chapter 1. It says to love righteousness. And that word said, love what is right. Ye that be judges of the earth. See, he was your audience. See, this is the point. The judges of the earth, either the 70 shepherds, either 70 watcher angels, whatever name you want to give them. It goes up in chapter 6. It picks it up again. Hear therefore, O ye kings, and understand. Learn, ye that be judges of the ends of the earth. Give ear, ye that rule the people, and glory in the multitude of nations. For power is given you of the Lord, and sovereignty from the highest. Who shall try your works and search out your counsels? Because being ministers of his kingdom, you have not judged aright, nor kept the law, nor walked after the counsel of Yahweh. Horribly and speedily shall come upon you, for a sharp judgment shall be to them that be in high places. Saying that, hey, watch your days are numbered. You're going down, all right? And by the authority of Yeshua and the angels he's bringing with him, and those that are here, you know. Okay, so but this is important to understand. This is what we're dealing with in the 4th heaven astral. And you know, I've done some teaching of this. I will continue as I gain this insight. And this is who Paul is talking about, that we are no longer under the law. We are no Gentile is under their influence. If they want to come out and switch kingdoms, it's a done deal. Yeshua did it. It's paid for. They're his. They're paid for. They can come out from under the influence of these astral watcher angels, and they can come into the kingdom of peace with Yeshua as king. Now, what I want to end on really quick is, okay, I have 2 more points. Hope I'm not too much like a freight train here. Now, why in getting back to the divine feminine, why it's important, in my opinion, we need to explore this concept Hebraically especially from the Kabbalah, which is and reclaim this understanding and be able to articulate it back to the nations, because we're supposed to free them from all the lies and the deceptions of their hard taskmasters, all right, and who were portraying themselves as gods who are not gods, and we're not letting them understand there's a high God. This is the point of it, you know. Okay, in the 2nd commandment, it basically says, he says, do not have any other gods before. Do not represent such gods by any carved statue or picture of anything in the heaven above, earth below, or in the water below the land. Do not bow down to such gods or worship them. I am the Lord, or I am the Elohim, your Yahweh, an Elohim who demands exclusive worship. All right, now on a much deeper level, let me tell you something. First of all, it says that we are talking about, you're not to bow down, worship, or make images of any of the gods that are in heaven and earth or in the water. That should be a real tip-off. Okay, this is what mythology has always been trying to tell us. This is the storyline. There are many dimensions. There are many living entities, and many times they are full of this desire to be worshipped as Yahweh, as Elohim. All right, and this is what the problem is. And they have the ability to manipulate in the world of materiality, like I showed you, Simon the Sorcerer, to make statues animate and to do all sorts of things, is to continue to deceive the people. This really does get into a lot of, lines. This is the root of lying, signs, and wonders. So the problem, don't even make them. Don't even go there. True Hebrews were only allowed, it says, based on these prohibitions, the Hebrew prophets, such as Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Amos, and others, preach very strongly against idolatry. In many of their sermons, as recorded in the biblical books bearing their names, the prophets regarded the use of religious images as a negative sign of assimilation into the surrounding pagan cultures of the time. This is the point. They did worship other gods. These other Elohim this is the point. And this is where it talks about how Simon Magus had a statue of him, I believe it was Zeus. And she was his Jupiter. And Simon, he's made in the likeness of Jupiter, and Helen in that of Minerva, the male and the female, their designation as, and they, all right, so let me get to my point, is goddesses. See, the whole point of unpacking the divine feminine or the masculine, and it's feminine or masculine. It's not a gender thing. We're not talking about guys and girls. We're not even talking about immateriality. We are talking about primordial, in essences, emanations in the Godhead. All right, but before I get there, so this is what was going on with the assimilation into the surrounding pagan cultures. They were constantly pulling in, and this is the Northern Kingdom pulling in the bulls. I mean, we understand what the bulls represent. That's a whole level of lower Elohims. Okay, so this is the problem. But the Torah permits drawings of humans as long as they are not used for idolatry. All right, and so this is and this is one of my things with we unpack the divine feminine. Why do you want to protect yourself as a teacher or as a person that you don't get into goddess worship or demigod worship or any of these things? Because these images, when you portray images, like if you're doing a teaching and you're showing all these goddesses, these are graven images. You have to understand one thing that the Hebrews understood. See, you guys said, our eyes are like barcodes. We scan. Everything we see is like your eyes, like a barcode. It just scans it. Once it scans it, it's in your head. It's very hard. That's why pornography is such an insidious infiltration by the enemy. It's very hard to get that stuff out of your mind. This is why it says be very careful. The gates. Let me look at the gates we have: our eyes, our ears, our mouth, our nose. These are gates. These are ways that spiritual nature not gets into us. So if you're if you're scanning things that you shouldn't be, you're creating problems in your inner man. So this is why the prohibition, don't even make them. Okay, first of all, they're not gods. Don't worship, don't make it, don't bow down to them, don't do anything. This was a big, again, in the early church in New England, having, this has always sort of been a debate in the church. But I think if we would understand on a deeper level what is going on. I mean, all right, but I do want to say this is an important thing we have to understand, because the next level down, if you're following a Gnostic, if you're following it's going to get you into goddess worship eventually, because that's the point. You worship a lesser Elohim. So the safe way is keep the second commandment. Don't be putting these images out all over the place. Yeah, you got a picture of Adam and Eve living in the garden. There is quote unquote religious art, but it can be a fine line, whatever. I just wanted to put that admonition out there. So the next thing I want to go to here is in terms of the divine feminine and and wisdom. First of all, wisdom, and you can look at it in the Hebrew, the whole point, it is a feminine word ending. The language does have masculine and feminine, because there is this is the whole storyline, that when we were made in the image, let us make a man in our image, plural words. And I could read it to you in Genesis 1:27, in a more Hebraic way. It's like Ha Elohim. which is the title, the Elohim, all right, with a capital E. The Elohim created man, Adam. It's very specific. We're talking about the Adamic man in his own image. Image is a word that denotes masculinity, all right? I don't have a problem with it. What we have to understand philosophically, these are just words that are denoting, helping to denote separation and context, all right? Our brains, they know our brains. This is the whole point. Once you make a template, it comes from a height. It keeps going all the way down. Our brains are in this perfect concept, a right brain and a left brain, a male and a female side. When they studied it, and they've studied this out. There are attributes, our brains, our left hemisphere, right pillar, left pillar, whatever word you want to give it. There is a binariness to it. There is a dualism to it. That's just a fact. It's because it was originally a whole was taken and split into, in an emanation way, parts, all right, for a very specific reason. But the Ha-Elohim, the high God, created Adam in his own image, which the word is used to mean the masculine. Image relates to masculine. In the image of Elohim, he created him, the first Adamic man, in the sense of Adam, the first Adam, which is a denotation of the whole species. And male and female, he created, and I believe the Hebrew translation better is to say him. So in the original Adam, we are talking about a unified species that had male and female. And the point is that after that, the story with Eve, he then took it and he separated them in a binary sense. When you get down to gender, when you get down to materiality, most materiality combines by taking two sides of the same coin, so to speak, combining it, and you get. This is spelled out, this is how we propagate, we reproduce, all right? And this is the original design of the Creator. It's very deep. It has some beautiful, this is what Paul's alluding to when he talks about, you know, the white, you know, Christ and the church, all right? There's deep, see, to understand how the use were used philosophically, we're the ones that lost it. So we put all these spins on it that aren't necessarily biblical. Creates a lot of problems. But anyways, therefore a man shall cleave, this is the point, shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall create one flesh. Now, therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother, and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. This is the point. This is the system that was set in place. Now, the prohibition was that a man shall leave the divine spirit, or, you know, the divine feminine, or, you know, our heavenly mother. I don't have a problem with these words being used in an intellectual and philosophical sense. All right, and you shouldn't either. Whatever. Part of this understanding was to give a clear prohibition to the Noah of forbidden unions. See, they understand the whole point of a lot in the Mosaic text. It will give into forbidden mixtures. Every species that was created in Genesis was told you reproduce within your own kind. That was the way the thing was originally designed to be. No viruses, no mucky up. There would be no genetic anomalies happening, any of this kind of thing. But of course, that is not the storyline. That's not what happened. So this is the point. The one flesh is the whole point of the fetus is formed by both of them. You take half of the woman's chromosomes, half of the man, you create a new nephesh. And a nephesh is the body that includes the soul. So this is the system Yahweh set up, and we have no right to monkey with it. This is why the whole ethical understanding of you're making test tube babies or designer babies, or I mean, it just gets crazy. This is the template, the archetype, the way it was instituted by Yahweh, and we need to stick with it. All right. Now, wisdom, who is the feminine aspect, and it's, you know, in many levels, the word is very polysemous. There are many levels to this. But one of them is in terms of the cosmology. And this is why in the Zohar it gets very deep in there. This is what makes Jews great scientists, these guys, because they have so much more information than we have on how the universe works, how the different dimensions work and interface with us, but whatever. Because the ones especially that will read their primary text. Wisdom, now I'm going to read out again out of the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7. It says, for wisdom is more moving than any motion. She passes and goes through all things by reason of her pureness. For she is the breath of the power of Elohim, and a pure influence flowing from the glory of the Almighty. Therefore can no defiled thing fall into her. For she is the brightness of the everlasting light, the unspotted mirror of the power of Elohim and the image of his goodness. And I should be saying the power of God, Yad Hey Vav Hey, I like to use the Hebrew names because this truly is where we're getting back to. We're getting back to who we are and the names we use. But that's a different thing. Okay, and being but one, she can do all things, and remaining in herself, she maketh all things new, and in all ages entering into holy souls, she maketh them friends of God and prophets. For God loveth none but him that dwelleth with wisdom. She is more beautiful than the sun. Now listen to me. And above all the order of stars, being compared with the light, she is found before it. For after this cometh night, but vice shall not prevail against wisdom. Praise Yahweh. Okay, there's so much in this, but let me just start with, she is the breath of Yahweh. This is the female persona is known as the bat coal. It is the voice. It is what hovers. It is a vibrational. Actually, if you want to get into the whole concept of physics and cosmology, she is sound. All the terminology, and she is affiliated with the left side. She is wisdom and understanding. She is, I could just do hours and hours of teaching, especially on how the Zohar breaks this down and gives us the information we need. But the point is, she is more moving than any motion. It's probably faster. I don't know what the word would have been in Hebrew than any motion. She passes away through all things by reason of her pureness. These things are completely, this is in the Godhead. You are completely pure, ethereal, holy, without any shadow of turning. This is the point. We're talking about pureness. By the breath of the power of Yahweh, this is the breath that was breathed into Adam. She's a pure influence flowing from the glory of the Almighty, and she is the brightness of the everlasting. This is the glory cloud. She is the personification of the glory, of the visible glory, the visible wisdom that was before, as it says here, compared with light, because she was found before it. If you read Genesis really close, there were two things that were not created, not part of it, and that was the waters and the spirit, which is the masculine and female. It gets really, people don't really understand how much is packed into Genesis, especially in the Hebrew, but either way. She is more beautiful than the sun and above all the order of stars. This is the point. She is above the astral planes, these fallen stars or problem astral entities, watcher angels, and she is above it. She is with, so this gives us so much information about the nature of wisdom, her position in the Godhead. Sorry, I'm just getting over a bad cold. But and God loveth none but him that dwelleth with wisdom. And if she dwells with you, that means you are a holy Torah keeping vessel, so that she can imbibe in you, she can live in you. This is the point. This is what was given back to us. She came in a visible manifestation, Pentecost, and this is the point. So there's a bunch in this. I want to just go again, this whole concept, because before you get down to trying to figure this out, and this is the point, most of the understanding about the male and the female has been designated to lower level materiality, roles of men, roles of women, and it's been perverted into, the man rules over all of this stuff. This is not the way it is in the Godhead. This is not the archetype. And this is what Yeshua came and freed, all of us, the human race, from all these misunderstandings and brought us into, and what Paul says, there's neither male nor female, slave nor free, but we're one in the Godhead. We are one with, but I can't, my last point I want to make, Philo, who again is a great person to read and study because he is a fully knowledgeable about his writings, the writings of the scribal house. You probably won't find anybody deeper who lived in the first century. In the last 2,000 years, he's right up there, in my opinion, with the sages of Israel. But this is what he says. It is formed so as to be both male and female and is made up of the power of both natures. Okay, for in existing things, the odd number is the male and the even is the female. See, there's a whole, this is the thing, you guys understand, this is a binary system that was instituted in the mind of Yahweh, in the Godhead, to begin the process of emanations down into creation, where we have materiality, and where everybody today says is without excuse to see this thing, because it's absolutely unbelievable, our creation, but he is greater than his creation, he is outside of his creation. But you will see this all over. Rabbi Isaac Luria, who was the founder of what they call Quranic Kabbalah today, had this to say about this concept. The person to whom our Torah speaks is neither a man nor a woman, but both combined. See, this is when Yeshua came to make peace. Left brain and our right brain, between the angel on the left, the angel on the right, to make peace, okay? To combine us, to make us fully whole and integrated. Our body, our soul, and spirit. But this is how Adam was first created, Adamic man species was first created, and this is how we are in essence. Two half bodies that are truly one. Okay? This is Hebraic understanding, and this is where it gets into the male and the female. The male carries the active seed, which is known as the, it is the active principle. The female carries the passive seed, the passive. It is the intermingling of active and passive that produces life. This is the yin and the yang. This is the X and the Y. This principle is deep and it's all over, and it is holy. It is holy. It functions in the Godhead just fine. And now as we're unpacking this, we need to how to learn how to function with our Heavenly Mother, our Heavenly Father, how we need to integrate ourselves to be a complete vessel, fit and holy for his purposes. So on that note, probably going to end. I shouldn't do this, but I will do this. Little teaser, if you stay with me this long, for next week, because, people are saying it is the image of the Holy Family. This is the Trinity, the top triad, all right? And when you get into the 10 emanations, it works in triads, threes, Father, Son. No, it's Father, Mother. It really is. That's why you have Father, Spirit, and feminine. You have masculine, feminine, and you have the Son, right? And this is where you get into the whole concept of Yod, He, Vod, He, which is really Yod, the first Yod, the Father, the second He, the first He, Mother, the Vav is the Son, and the final He is the daughter. So we got a little more unpacking to do. We've got the Mother, the Father, and the Son, but I'll tell you what, guys, there's a daughter too. It's a great holy family. So